This book represents the collection of principles and ideas that I have learned over the following weeks, and my interpretation via the weekly items. The pages are divided into different examples and identities of the creative process and how, through a variety of mixed mediums, I have attempted to replicate the concepts with my own style and ambitions. For analogies, I focused on how they are used to personify and give significance to relationships between tangible and non-tangible objects. I use the universal experience of building a card house, a tedious and delicate task, to relate to the design experience. I also framed this as a family setting, as the quote heavily relates to the thankless job of parenting. Because of that, the picture takes inspiration from Norman Rockwell's Freedom of Wand, which was made to represent the ideal family life. For metaphor, I looked at what made metaphors more expressive than analogies, and how groups use metaphors to create powerful political statements against the mainstream ideologies, which is often used by organizations such as PETA, which depict the violence and suffering of the meat industry by symbolizing the value of meat to the value of human life. My mixed media painting of a dark look into the giant corporations that control our digital information. It acts as a metaphor for the digital clone they can replicate of their users through their large collection of private information, and how the companies should for ethnography. I learned what innovations were made through design and searched for what flaws haunted designs in the public space. The idea that design is a constantly evolving concept and that all designs can be reworks to a more specific demographic, such as through Dan Jones's reimagined scissors for school children, which looked at redesigning the handle to better suit smaller hands. My redesign of a campus pathway looked not at solving a design flaw but adapting it to work towards the human design laid out. The path plays on the idea of efficiency over extravagance, which is itself a summary of the modern student lifestyle. As someone who uses this path often, it finally gave me an opportunity to voice my complaints with the planning and embrace the alternative. For storytelling, I studied how the use of artistic style and hierarchy can be used to depict extra depth in a narrative sense and researched how these properties are used to emphasize significant moments throughout comic book history. My visual narrative takes my issues with the pathway depicted previously into a satirical bite at unfixed design flaws through looping framing. For space and time, I looked at overarching narrative structures and stories through in media, and how many of these distinctive styles depict narrative in a much deeper light. Visualizing movie arcs through infographics which show tension and action through time. I adapt my previous comic into a motion comic using a unique narrative structure that suits the satirical message. The structure I use is called the story circle, as explained by Dan Harmon, which depicts the story as a loop in which a character adventures forth and goes through a journey of self-discovery and development only for nothing to change, which works hand in hand with the pessimism of the story. These weeks have presented a vast array of different perspectives that, while I still incorporated in earlier works, were somewhat subconscious actions I took while creating my designs. It's interesting to be able to look back on work I had previously done and observe the use of imagery I used to display time in an old comic book, or the use of analogies and metaphors I embraced in old marketing projects, to realize a frustration I have against a poorly placed door hinge, and to observe media narrative structures in a more statistical way.